I warned you. I told you not to dare save him. You should have listened." Mildred had finally proved how far she could go. She had finally shown us all how heartless she really was. I honestly believed there had to be a limit to the nosiness, the constant peeking, the clipboard patrols, the smug warnings delivered with fake smiles. I told myself nobody could sink lower than that. I was painfully wrong, and that realization hit long before the real damage even started. Welcome to Karen Conflict. Make sure you like and subscribe for your top-notch HOA drama. It all started when my cousin came to visit. Marcus flew in for a short vacation, hoping to relax, eat real food, and laugh too loud without anyone filing a complaint. He was dark-skinned, sharp-witted, endlessly polite, and the kind of guest who washed dishes without being asked. The first morning he arrived, Mildred appeared near my driveway, pretending to inspect sprinklers that weren't even hers. Later that day, she knocked, smiling tight, claiming she had noticed a strange individual near my house. When she described him, I calmly told her it was my cousin. Her smile froze, cracked, then reset. She nodded, said everything was fine, and walked away too quickly. Things shifted after that. Mildred began timing our movements. She waved at me, but stared at Marcus like he was a math problem she refused to solve. She circled the block slowly whenever he sat outside. One afternoon, she asked where he worked, how long he planned to stay, and whether he had permission to reside here. I answered politely, but her pen scratched angrily against her clipboard. Before we dive in deeply, let us know in the comments what country or which city you're watching this story from. We'd love to know how far this story travels. A few days later, Mildred called again, her voice sugary but sharp around the edges. She asked why my so-called cousin was still in the neighborhood. I paused, then asked her calmly what she meant. She claimed she was only checking in, making sure everything was temporary. I told her he was visiting, not squatting, and that his travel plans were none of her concern. She laughed once, short and fake, then said people like him tended to overstay. That sentence told me everything. Later that evening, she cornered me near the mailbox cluster. She said there was no official problem yet, but some residents were uneasy. She blamed property values, safety, and standards. I reminded her that guests were allowed. Under HOA rules, she waved that off and said rules could be reviewed. Then she walked away smiling like she'd already won something. At the next HOA meeting, Mildred took the floor longer than usual. She talked about non-residents draining resources, using facilities they didn't pay for, and creating risks. She never said my cousin's name, but every sentence pointed straight at him. Heads nodded. Papers shuffled. Nobody challenged her. I sat there stunned as she proposed stricter guest enforcement, dressed up as a temporary measure. 2 days later, the consequences started. When Marcus tried entering the gym, the attendant stopped him. Guests were suddenly restricted. When I walked in with him, they said guests weren't allowed during peak hours. Peak hours now meant almost all day. At the pool, his wristband was questioned. At the lounge, access was denied. Every rule changed depending on whether he was standing there. I confronted Mildred directly. She claimed innocence, said policies weren't personal, then warned me that pushing back could escalate matters. That word stuck with me. Escalate. She wasn't calming anything. She was testing limits, measuring reactions, and enjoying the imbalance. I realized then she wasn't just enforcing rules, she was weaponizing them, and she wasn't close to finished yet. One quiet afternoon, when the house finally felt calm again, everything snapped. Marcus went into the bathroom to shower, humming off-key like he always did when he thought nobody was listening. I was in the kitchen rinsing a cup when a sharp scream tore through the house. It wasn't dramatic or drawn out. It was raw, panicked, and instantly froze my blood. I ran down the hallway and burst into the bathroom. Water flooded the floor. Marcus was on the tiles, twisted awkwardly, one arm pinned beneath him. His face was pale, teeth clenched, breath uneven. He'd slipped hard. I knelt beside him, heart racing, asking if he could move. He tried, winced, and shook his head. I grabbed my phone and called emergency services, stumbling over my words while trying to keep him still. The ambulance arrived quickly, lights flashing, lickety-split, professionalism cutting through my panic. The paramedics moved with calm precision, checking his vitals, asking questions, stabilizing him. Marcus cracked a weak joke about bad luck, trying to stay brave. I was just starting to breathe again when a familiar voice sliced through the moment. Mildred stormed in like she owned the hallway. She demanded they stop immediately. One paramedic turned, confused, and asked what the issue was. Mildred pointed at Marcus and said he wasn't a resident, didn't pay HOA fees, and had no right to community services. The paramedic blinked, then explained that emergency care didn't work that way. Mildred raised her voice, insisting rules were rules. She said letting them continue set a dangerous precedent. She warned them there would be consequences. If they ignored her authority, the paramedics ignored her and kept working, applying pressure, checking for fractures, calmly explaining that delaying care could cause serious harm. Mildred grew louder, pacing, jabbing her finger toward Marcus like he was a violation notice instead of a human being. Neighbors gathered outside, whispering. Phones came out. Mildred seemed fueled by the attention. She kept repeating that she had warned everyone. When the paramedics said they needed to transport him for tests, Mildred scoffed, calling it unnecessary. I stood shaking, anger burning through fear, realizing this had crossed far beyond harassment. This wasn't about rules anymore. It was about control, and Mildred was spiraling fast. Just as the stretcher rolled toward the driveway, Mildred vanished for a heartbeat and reappeared with pure intent. She ripped open her car door, reached inside, and came out gripping a metal bat like she'd rehearsed this moment. Someone screamed her name. Someone yelled to stop. Mildred didn't slow down. She sprinted. The first swing cracked into the paramedic's head with a sickening metallic ring that sucked the air out of the street. The second slammed into her shoulder as she folded, hitting the ground hard. The paramedic went limp, unconscious. Silence detonated into chaos. Neighbors shrieked. Phones flew up. The bat clanged against the pavement as it slipped from Mildred's hands. I dropped beside the paramedic, checking her breathing, calling her name, feeling my pulse slam in my ears. She was breathing, barely. I spun and saw Mildred, pacing, chest heaving, still yelling about rules, still claiming authority, still insisting she'd warned everyone. Her eyes were wild, detached, like consequences didn't exist where she stood. I called the police. My voice didn't shake. The other paramedic worked furiously, radioing for backup, refusing to abandon her partner. Someone kicked the bat farther away. Mildred tried to talk her way out, tripping over her own words, blaming policy, blaming me, blaming the world. Sirens arrived fast. Officers ran in, guns down, commands sharp. Mildred tried to walk off. She was stopped, cuffed, and dragged toward a cruiser while screaming about lawsuits and power. Body cameras caught everything. The bat, the strikes, the collapse, the witnesses finally speaking in one overlapping wave. The injured paramedic survived after emergency surgery. Mildred didn't, not socially, not legally. She was charged with aggravated assault, with a deadly weapon and obstruction. The judge gave her 6 years in state prison, citing lack of remorse. She was ordered to pay $485,000 in restitution, covering medical bills, lost wages, and trauma damages. The HOA removed her permanently and dissolved the committee she controlled. When she was taken away, the neighborhood didn't cheer. It breathed. Accountability finally showed up, loud and undeniable. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe to Karen Conflict for more. See you next time.